start, okay? There's just two of us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just gonna shuffle over.
So I have a partner, and he,
Thank you.
you're welcome. He spending all this money on marketing. And I came and did a talk to some people here a few months ago. And on my way here, he had one of these little, gave me these, he sold me these things, these little puzzles. And I was on my way here thinking, before I give these things out, I better make sure they work. So I'm in the car, I'm parked, and I'm in the car and trying to figure, it was another one, it wasn't this. And I called him and I said, Jerome, like, this freaking wood thing that I bought, like, does it? Oh yeah, he said it works. So we had 6 or 8, 10 people in here the last time, and I passed it around for the half an hour or so, and nobody figured it out. There was a little marble in there. Anyway, Leslie Briggs, I don't know if you know Leslie. Leslie Briggs sent me a photo later in the day with a picture of the marble that came out of this little wooden box. So, this is a little Rubik's Cube type thing. I've not opened one of these up, but you can take a peek at it, and the message is there. Many solutions exist for your clients' needs. Okay, anyway,
I love that.
this is a little bit odd that there's only 2 of us,
Yeah, I'm surprised.
but that's okay.
I'm surprised.
I'm very surprised.
Usually there's a lot of people
Yeah,
come to
the
it.
turnout is generally.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to talk for 12, 15 minutes, and then we can answer questions, and maybe, are you hungry? We can maybe get, see whether, I think Caitlin might go and get some lunch. We were just waiting for some numbers. Is there anything in particular you want? Like
No.
a couple of sandwiches maybe?
Yeah, I'm not picky.
Okay, excuse me, I'll be right back.
So I'm allowed to open it.
Yes,
Yeah,
you can open it,
fine.
sure.
What's your name?
Karen.
Karen, are you new?
Yes.
Yeah, Karen. I'm Laura.
Nice to meet you, Laura.
I'm also new here.
Oh, that's wonderful. When did you join?
Last year, November.
How are you liking it?
I like it. It's very close to where I live.
Perfect.
That's
Isn't
why
that?
I moved here.
That's
Because
pretty.
it's my neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people here are very friendly,
Yeah.
very helpful.
I found that too. The friendliness was like the best thing for me.
Because you want to work with people who is there to help you.
And you want to ask a question and hope that they answer you honestly and not answer you so then just enough so you don't do well. But just answer, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So people
totally.
hold their information and you're like, I just want to know how to fill this out. And they're just like,
Yeah, it happened to me. I was with relatives and Vaughn,
mm-hmm.
and it was like that.
Yeah,
Nobody was there to help you.
I find it with like Remax or LePage and Century Turn 1, they're just so more into, like, yeah, just keeping the information.
Everything.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was hard, but this is the way to go. Which office you come from?
Century 21, Richmond Hill.
You many years in the business?
4 months at Century 21. And then 3 weeks here.
In the business? Like as a realtor and everything?
Yeah, so 4 months.
Only 4 months?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're brand new?
Yeah, so 4 months with Century 21 and then I just started here.
Oh, that's the first thing you made.
Yeah.
They have a lot. Are you doing it at night?
Yes.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's for good.
Yeah, I want to do it again in a couple months when I when I started to already done a couple sales and stuff. I want to do it again and pick up more information and different things because it's a lot. It's overwhelming. Like your head afterwards, you're like, oh my head's gonna explode for sure.
Yeah, I felt that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's a good feeling, better than feeling lost, right? Like too much information.
Section 21 I remember that was one of the office I interviewed.
Mm-hmm. I hated them. I have a lot of resentment towards them. Not their fault. I mean, I ultimately made the decision, but I resent them for misrepresenting themselves. they don't want us to misrepresent ourselves to clients if the brokerages are doing it to us. So it's like, how are we supposed to know? You know, you're too green, you're too fresh, and they're just going to take advantage. So,
Did they offer you to work in a team?
yeah, I was part of a team. Yeah.
Any luck with that?
I think I'm in.
I don't know what you can do with it, but okay. I'm gonna start, okay, we got lunch coming. So I'm gonna start by saying,
You are a broker?
I'm a mortgage broker, and
Hello, you guys.
hey,
So good. You're so fortunate to have two people in a captive audience like this. There we go.
I
It
love
shows
it.
you-
I had such a great time talking to Karen.
Good to Karen. Good to see you again, Karen.
What a firecracker.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure
both
you
of
are
them
too,
are,
Laura,
both
but
of
I've
them are.
only had a chance to talk to Karen.
Yeah, and you know, we were just talking about circumstances and knowledge and people wanting to understand the mortgage world. And sometimes there's a lot of people wanting to know it, and at other times there's not so many. So you're very lucky just to have
Like,
the two
it's,
of you here.
it's an honor to be here, and
We appreciate it.
It's a treat, and hopefully, in 10, 12, 15 minutes, we can just shed a little bit of light
Yeah.
and just come away from this just a little bit better.
That's perfect.
You know, I always say, like,
Look at
we're
this, you
such
claimed it
a
already.
similar industry. It's such, we're in
Yeah.
sales, everybody's a realtor,
Yes.
everybody's a mortgage broker, and you just need to differentiate a little bit. And I think if you've got a client or a prospect that you're maybe driving around and they say, geez, what is the land transfer tax rebate in Toronto?
Mhm.
Can we answer the question?
Yes.
Or do we have to say, you know what, I'm gonna get back to you? Well, it's $8,500 if you're a first timer.
Right.
And you don't pay it and wait for it to come back. If your lawyer fills out the right form, it's an automatic instant rebate.
Sure.
So there's some things like that. If you can answer the question instead of say, well, let me get back to you on that. I just think it just makes it a little bit, wow,
Yeah,
my realtor
yeah.
really knows what's going on. Like,
Yeah, I was just telling, John and I just had a really brief conversation about looking at market conditions and statistics right now. In the tail end of last year, beginning of this year, we've seen a real quiet time, which has been abnormal for the last few years. And the market, you start to see that more communicated by the media when they start to get this information. I see it because I can look at trailing numbers, I look at forward numbers, and current circumstance. So this is an ideal time to learn as much as you possibly can about ways and means to become the economic spokesperson in your community. Understand what you're talking about, and also understand that basically what's starting to build up is the limited supply, high demand still, which is spectacular, because all of a sudden we're into a busy marketplace into the spring and fall. It's just sitting there. So you're at the early stage of it. The more knowledge you have, the better it is. And then really work your database. Those 5 or 10 or 15 or 100 or 200 or whatever the size is, to develop a better relationship in this time so that these people can buy, sell, or invest. Just keep thinking like that.
it'll happen.
It'll happen.
And having a database is so important too.
That's the bottom
You
line.
talk about, there's gonna be entry number 1, and entry number 2, and entry number 6.
Well, we're going to be giving all of our agents is building a whole new database management system, which will be the operating program of Command. And we're all ready to do that. I will have it too. So we'll show you that when we're ready.
It's so important.
Yeah.
And you think, but it's just my sister and my cousin. Who cares? It's
They
one
know
two.
people. They know
Exactly.
people.
Yeah.
And just you start your.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks
Leave
for
you guys.
thanks
I'll
for
leave you
dropping
guys.
in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Norm and I were talking about how the market has kind of seized up a little bit, and my experience is that homeowners, they think their house is worth this.
Oh,
worth
yeah,
this.
always.
And buyers think it's worth this. And there's just a gap, and then you think about selling and real estate commission and land transfer tax to buy again, and people are just thinking, I'm not gonna sell, I'm just gonna renovate. I'll defer selling my place. Okay, so I don't really have a script or a scribe for today. It kind of depends on who's here. But I'm just still going to go through a little bit of a presentation. And really, we're in the service industry, and it's all about service. And I'm going to define service, but I'm going to say that it's all about service, our success, and socks. And why am I saying it's all about socks? Because I want to get your attention. I'm going to show you my socks. That's why this piece of cardboard is here.
I'm going to get shit done.
Yeah. There it is. I want the camera to get that as well.
Yes.
So
I'm going to the
I'm gonna get shit done. It's a silly little entree, but these are the socks that I'm wearing today. But so what does service mean? It's the same for you, it's the same for me. And I define service as knowledge and access or availability. So if I can answer my phone and someone says, oh, I was just referred to you by your client, Robin James, and I can answer the phone, and I'm halfway there. Hey, how are you? How can I help you? What are you looking to buy? Blah, 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 blah. If it goes in a voicemail and I don't, so obviously availability, access. My wife isn't crazy about it, but I take calls at night. I can be at restaurants, I'm on the phone, I'm texting, because I want to be available and I want to provide the service that the banks don't provide. And the other word that it's kind of like the acronym that you were talking about is alacrity. So alacrity, it means eager readiness. I want the business. I want to succeed. I want to knock your socks off with my service so that you want to refer your friends and family to me. So we're in such a similar boat. So, just the example of the land transfer tax. It's just an example of something that, talk about service, getting referrals. So how much is the land transfer tax and what's the size of the rebate? So on $1 million purchase, land transfer tax is about $34,000 in Toronto. The rebate's $8,500.
And how did you calculate that?
I just went to a land transfer tax calculator. Yeah. But I mean, the question really is, the more likely question is, what is the rebate? Or like, you could have an app on your phone that shows where you can access land transfer tax. Pay $1 million and it's $35,000. So this is another one. I was like, you're with a client and they don't want to go, say they don't want to pay more than $900,000. But the seller's agent tells you that 910 will get the deal done. So what's the cost to borrow an extra 10 grand? Dude, it's $40 a month. To borrow an extra $10,000. Like, borrow 610 instead of 600. It'll cost you $40 a month. It's 2 trips to Starbucks a month. Like, so knowing that borrowing 10 grand is costing you $40 a month, that kind of stuff to me will just make your service even better.
So $40 you calculate based on the interest of that day, for example, more or less.
Yeah, and to borrow that, so it's $400 to $500 a month to borrow $100,000. So you borrow, let's say it's $500. You borrow $500,000. Your mortgage payment's going to be $2,500 a month. It's less than that, and it depends on the rate, and it depends on amortization. But it's about $500 a month to borrow $100,000. So if you've got a client that says, geez, I really didn't want to borrow more than $400, what would it cost me to borrow $500? Well, you could say it's going to be about $2,500 a month. Go variable, it's a little less. So if they say, what if I want to borrow $510? Well, that's going to be $2,500 plus $40, $50. So it's just going to be a little easier for them to say, okay, I'll pay $910 even though $900 was my limit. Just a couple of examples of, like I was telling Karen, when I started this commission business, I didn't understand it. I had no clue what it was like to do sales. I still don't, frankly. But I just remember getting a deal and closing the transaction, and then somebody came to me, another mortgage broker, and said, those are my clients. You did my deal. I said, no, I wasn't. I wanted the deal, and I bought them a Leaf jersey, and like they filled out the form, and oh no, those are my clients. He calls them up and says, hey, John, yeah, it's Vince here. I know John Cocomile looked after you, but you're my clients, right? And they said, yeah. So I had to give up the commission. And just the mindset of a commission salesperson.
And you guys do that too?
Pardon me?
You guys have that problem too?
Yes,
Yes,
it's the same thing.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
So, that was like my first deal, and I serviced them to death.
Yeah.
I didn't make any money on the deal because I bought the Leaf jersey. I had one of the Leafs sign it, and anyway. So we just talk about the importance of service and knowledge, and service to me means access, availability, and knowledge, and then I threw in that word alacrity. Alacrity it's a Greek word, and it means eager readiness, and that's me. I'm dying to check my email right now because there could be somebody calling saying, hey, my neighbor recommended you. But just, you're probably, well, let me ask you, how long have you been a realtor?
2 years.
Okay, so do you ask clients for referrals?
No.
Like, I always struggle with that. Like, I just want my actions to maybe scream out that, hey, this guy is so effective and so good that I want my friends to experience it. But I think if you speak to people in the know, like maybe Aresta would help you with some of the more experienced realtors, you say, you have to let people know, because not everybody understands that your livelihood is based on really word of mouth. I mean, sure, there's cold calls and there's door knocking and all that stuff, but a warm lead is a lot better than somebody taking your phone call and saying, you know what, I'm watching The Bachelor right now, would you leave me alone?
Yeah.
Don't call me. Did anyone watch The Bachelor?
I don't like
No? Okay.
it.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so just a little bit of substance and then we're going to have some lunch.
Okay.
So, you probably came across these acronyms, GDS and TDS, and gross debt service and total debt service. And basically, what has developed is rules, guidelines where you can't borrow more than 39% of your income for housing. So, let's think about that. I'm a school teacher, I make $100,000. The most I can borrow for housing is $39,000. I'm an employed school teacher. I've got a letter and a pay stub. So you think of $39,000, just do some quick math. If the property taxes are $3,000, let's assume it's freehold, not condo. I've got $36,000 for mortgage payments. That's $3,000 a month. So then we would go to the calculator and say $3,000 a month will get you a mortgage for $380,000. So the $100,000 employed school teacher will qualify for a $380,000 mortgage with a property taxes of $3,000. That's freehold, not condo.
Okay.
Condo would be a lower amount because we've got to take into account.
100 income?
100 income is going to get you about $380 of a loan amount.
Plus the down payment.
Yes, that's just loan amount, right? And then down payment, and you wonder, is the down payment 20% or is it a CMHC insured deal? And that gets a little bit more specific. But we're talking about TDS and GDS, 39, 44. So housing payments can't exceed 39% of your income. So my question is, what if your client is buying, not selling, and they're self-employed? So I'm self-employed, and I want to show as little income as I can because, of course, I don't want to pay taxes. So does anybody know, like, how does it work for self-employed people?
I don't know, if you go to a few lender, you just
A
pay
good try.
12%.
Nice try. Do you have any ideas? Like, because let's face it, I don't think you can be self-employed as realtors. I think you have to be like you're an employee with certain write-offs, and you get a T4A, I think it is, with your gross income, then you can write off all your expenses. But even for you, you might try and bring your income down to as small a number as possible because, of course, that's what we pay our taxes on.
You're supposed to be self-independent contractors.
Okay, that sounds right. So let's talk about an independent contractor like yourselves. And let's say that even though your gross revenue, and this might be a little bit discouraging to use this example, but let's say that your gross commissions for the year are $300,000. And it takes a little time to get there, but I would think in a couple of years that you'll be laughing at the thought of being overwhelmed by a $300,000 gross. So your gross numbers are $300,000. So what would that mean? It might mean you sell a house a month. Okay, about a house a month maybe. So your gross revenue, $300,000, but you want to shelter as much of that as possible. You've got home office, you've got car expenses, you've got training, you've got books and studying and marketing, all that stuff. And you whittle it down to 60,000. Your accountant can't get it any lower than that. Well, now you go and buy that, you want that $380,000 mortgage, like the school teacher, but bank says, sorry, you only show 60, and 39% of 60 is, I can't do that math off the top of my head, but let's say it's 25,000, and divide that by 12, and now you're borrowing 180. So what do these self-employed people do? Any ideas other than going to a B lender?
Well, I heard somebody saying, you're gonna just, he said, gross income.
Awesome.
But I don't know how far.
Okay.
We're gonna go with that. I
Okay,
haven't-
so they're both great choices and great options, and the B lender is an option because the B lender says, never mind 39, 44 GDS, TDS, we're going to allow you 50 and 60. So 50% of your income, so the school teacher can borrow, can pay up to 50,000 of his income for housing. That would get him 440,000 instead of 380. But we're talking about self-employed people. Gross, like yourselves, gross revenue is 300. The net total income that's taxable is 60. So either we go to the B lender or we go to the A lender and we say, look, here's Laura. She's an independent contractor for more than 2 years, and here's her T1 generals showing gross revenue of 300 in 2 years and net revenue of 60. She's got great credit. We're going to state her income. So there's a stated income program. So using the B route is one option. But if you have good credit and you're self-employed for at least 2 years, you can state your income. Now, I know I say 60 on my tax returns, but I really make 120. Like, my business is paying for my car and my home office and all these other expenses. So it's reasonable to state 120, so that person that's paying tax on 60 should be able to qualify for more than the employee that makes 100. So that's the stated income program. Minimum down payment is 10%, not 5. But that's how a self-employed person would qualify for a mortgage. Some lenders will charge a little premium on the rate, small premium, a little bit of a higher rate, so maybe instead of 349 for a 5-year fixed, it might be 354. But who cares? Because number one, some of that interest is probably going to be deducted by the independent contractor because now some of their mortgage expense is deductible. But that's employee qualifying based on 100 versus, I'm going to say a self-employed person or say an independent contractor. As long as you have good credit and you can show some continuation of a reasonable, of 300, for example. So dog walker, a little tougher, right? Like, really, like, is it reasonable to state 120,000 for a dog walker? No, but maybe if you show us your top line revenue and we look at your expenses. So it's got to be reasonable. A brain surgeon that's self-employed could probably get away with a bigger percentage of their gross billings than maybe a dog walker. But that's how you get back to the ratios and the serviceability, TDS, GDS, because lenders now, everybody's so regulated, they've got to stay 3944, except for the B lenders that charge more. So I just thought knowing this little piece of info would be helpful. Like, it's not like you've got clients asking you for mortgage feedback, but just understanding. You might ask as you get a lead, so what are you looking for? What kind of work do you do? Well, I'm a contractor. Oh, are you self-employed? Oh, I'm self-employed. If they don't say 2 years, no, red flags go up, because if it's not 2-year minimum, lenders won't allow you to state your income. And that's where it's tough. Now you're in the B game, right? You got to go to a B lender, higher rates.
And you do that too, right? Like, you have different companies you work with?
Yes.
So you,
Exactly.
I can take your client and you decide where to put it.
Yeah, I would put them in the best place. So unlike a TD mortgage rep, I deal with TD Scotia and all of them. And it's free. Like the lender pays me a commission. So what do you think about that content? We talk about employees versus self-employed people.
That's really
And
cool.
it's because it's often the self-employed people that are buying, that are active, and they're buying and they're making stuff happen.
When you talk about good credit, how high the credit has to be?
For the stated income program, the self-employed person has to have a credit score above 680, which is pretty easy.
10%.
Which is pretty easy. Now the problem with the stated income program is the maximum purchase price can't exceed $1 million. How pathetic is that? And the maximum loan amount can't exceed $750 in Toronto. It's ridiculous. What can you buy for $1 million in Toronto? But that's the way the rules are, and that's CMHC.
And that's for residential or commercial?
Oh, it's residential.
What
Yeah.
about commercial?
You can only state income for residential property.
For commercial?
No, so a commercial lender is going to charge higher rates, and it's a little more like a B experience where they're going to say, show us your bank records, show us what kind of revenue you've been doing, what sort of rents can we anticipate if you're buying a property where there's rental units. So stated income can only be for an owner-occupied property. It can't be for residential rental, and it can't be for a commercial property. So commercial property, there's another process altogether, and it's not 3944. They talk about debt service. I forget what the acronym is. I'll find out. But it's really how much revenue does that building generate compared to the expenses that you're going to incur as a result of owning it. So it's more related to the collateral, the real estate that the lender's getting in return for the loan. Well, this is purely self-employed for minimum 2 years, good credit, and owner-occupied purchases. And I'm guessing that most realtors that are kind of younger in this career are looking at working more with first-time home buyers and residential purchasers as opposed to commercial. So what do you think? Was it helpful?
Yes. Are we going to discuss the first-time homeowners and all that and how that works?
We can, sure. Yeah, it's all free time now.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And then I guess like the RSPs as well, like when you take out your RSPs out, like you have to do one or the other. You can't do both, right? You can't do first-time
You can do both.
Okay.
So this is, I'm ready for some food. So we'll just talk about some of the first-timer stuff, okay? So land transfer tax, for example, it's a big factor, and you can't borrow it. You have to have the savings for down payment and closing costs. So the definition of first-timer for land transfer tax, you cannot own real estate anywhere in the world. You cannot have owned real estate anywhere in the world. So if you maybe inherited a little sliver of land in northern Italy and your great-grandparents left it to you, and then you owned that little sliver of land, you're not considered a first-time home buyer for purposes of the land transfer tax rebate.
Okay, got it.
And it's up to you to make that disclosure. You sign a form, the lawyer says, do you swear it's true, so help you God. I've never owned real estate anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So they don't know, they're not going to do some worldwide search to see if you've ever owned real estate, but it could always come back to bite you if you defraud the government. Okay? So the definition of, please, go ahead.
Okay, just because I'm thinking about myself, because I need a mortgage at the end of the summer. My mom asked me to be on one of the houses way back when, I can't remember how long ago now, but just so she could get qualified for a larger mortgage, I had to co-sign that. Does that fall under that I was now, like I won't be able to use my first time home?
So there's a couple definitions for first-time home buyer, okay? So
Okay.
if you were on title, and not just a guarantor,
Yeah.
then you're no longer considered a first-time home buyer for purposes of the land transfer tax rebate. It's not the end of the world, it's just that you're not going to get the rebate. And the rebate for property in Toronto it's just under $8,500.
Okay.
If you, assuming you pay closer to $1 million, the rebate is significant. So the definition of first-time home buyer for RSP purposes is not as onerous, and it kind of makes sense because the government's trying to promote homeownership, and if there's ever a loophole for taxes, it's going to be closed up. So the land transfer tax loophole is closed. You've owned real estate, the sliver of a vineyard in Italy, or you own real estate just to help your mom qualify for a bigger mortgage. It's too bad you will not get the first-timer land transfer tax rebate. But you would still be considered a first-time home buyer for RSP purposes. So it's a different definition.
Okay.
For what?
RSP
Oh,
withdrawal
RSP.
purposes. So let's say I've got a couple buying a house. It's $800,000. They're both first-time home buyers. One of them has $50,000 in an RSP. One of them has $5,000. So they can each pull out up to $25,000. So wife might pull 25 out, husband might pull 5 out, parents might have gifted them 25,000. They may have another 10,000 in savings. So the RSPs can be a part of a bigger down payment.
And then you have 2 years to pay that back.
You have 15 years to pay it back.
15?
15, yep.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yep, so it's a 1/15 each year for 15 years. So that comes to a little over $1,000 a year to pay back. And you can participate in the RSP First-Time Home Buyers Program, even if you've already participated in it once. So the definition of first-timer for RSP purposes is much more flexible than it is for the land transfer tax piece. It's going to be a little quiz here today, okay? So I hope you're paying attention. Okay, just kidding. So first-timers, we were talking about, one thing that I often find is first-timers, they're pre-approved, they're all ready to make an offer, found the house, okay, we need a deposit of 5%, kind of seems like it's this industry standard, $800,000 purchase, you need $40,000. $40,000? My money's all tied up in my RSPs. Like, I don't have $40,000. Like, that conversation should have happened much earlier. Look, borrow it on a line of credit, get it from parents. I don't care where you get it, but you gotta get it. Otherwise, we're not gonna get it. We're not gonna have a chance. Like, I know the market's slow, but when places come up, if they're priced well, there's multiples. There's not a lot of transactions, but the ones that are happening, there's frenzy. If the seller thinks his place is worth $1.2 million, because that's what his neighbor sold for 2 years ago, that place will sit. Right, let's face it. But so the need for a deposit. So I've got clients that are selling and buying. It's like, you say to them, do you know, like, you're going to need some money for a deposit? No, all our money's tied up in our house, like all our equity. We've got lots of it, but it's all tied up. I said, look, you've got to get 40 grand. Like, you've got to get it. Well, where are we going to get it? He said, well, you got a line of credit? Yeah. Call BMO and see if they'll extend it. Like, it's only a short-term bridge until we sell your house. Because otherwise, you put a $500 deposit, or you make an offer to purchase, and you say, like, here's $500. I'll give you another $25,000, but I need 15 days because I got to unwind it from my RSPs. Like, the seller's going to say, next. Like, yeah, like, come on. Like, I like to see a bank draft attached to an offer. Do you follow? Like, some realtors don't do that, but they say, like, if you really want to go at this place, go to the bank, pay the $15, and bring me a bank draft for $50,000 payable to Kelly Williams, or $40,000, whatever it is. we're gonna have a go at this thing. If you're not serious, then don't waste my time.
Yeah.
Do you get it? So we talked about first timer, friendly transfer tax, first timer for RSP, the need for a deposit. Another interesting little tidbit that is often misunderstood. Please.
So when you said the client can go to the BMO and say, extend my line of credit, will he show like more debt in his name when he will apply for the new mortgage?
Right, great question. Yes, it would. I mean, reality is, the lender may condition, here's the mortgage approval, it's conditional upon certain things. Number one, property must be owner occupied. Number two, the BMO line of credit must be paid out from the sale proceeds. So they may condition for that if the TDS and GDS becomes out of line, but it's a great question. So I thought you were going to say, what if BMO says no? What if they're already tapped out? Because everybody is. Everybody's tapped out on their credit cards. So I said to the clients, look, if parents can't front you the money, you can't, friends, line of credit, whatever, we can try and increase the mortgage on your existing home that you have listed for sale. We can try and do if we can't get a secured line of credit, we can try and get you a private mortgage for 50 grand for 6 weeks, like so that you can at least access the money. But the sooner that conversation can happen with the realtor, the better, right? Like, hey, are you serious? We're looking at places. You've got some money set aside for a deposit. Maybe you unwind the RSPs now, even though you haven't made an offer, right? You can unwind them. I think you've got a year after you unwind your RSPs to buy a place. So maybe we can unwind them now, get to 25 or 30 or 50, whatever it is. As long as you buy a place within a year, you're not going to be taxed on that RSP withdrawal. So, after seeing, hey, hi Aresta.
I'm so sorry. Don't mean to interrupt. Lovely seeing you. Please come find me in the building
Okay.
after, okay?
Done. Thanks. So, after I've spent 15 years in the slapping machine, you know, the machine that hits me back and forth, losing deals, not reading the fine print, not reading the condition in an offer, not looking at the zoning on a listing, and seeing that the zoning permits commercial use or something. And eventually, you still don't see it all, but you just start to learn this, the stuff starts, it all kind of comes together and makes sense. Anyway,
Give us an example for a first-time buyer, as you were saying. When they are first-time buyers, they can get the money from the RSP, or if they don't have all the down payment, can they apply for line of credit?
well, you can't borrow the down payment, right? You can't, because let's just assume, because the math is easy, let's assume a $500,000 purchase. The minimum down payment's $25,000. Most first-timers don't have $100,000 to get away from CMHC, so they borrow $475,000. They put $25,000 down. If they don't have $25,000 and they have to borrow it, well, then they're borrowing more than 95%, and that's not allowed anymore.
What about the RSPs? Can they take 25 from the RSPs?
Definitely,
Right?
definitely. But what if they don't have the RSPs unwound yet? Then they could borrow on a line of credit as one option. But the lender may say, you're going to have to pay that back from your RSP withdrawal. Once you pull your RSPs at 25, you may have to use some of it to pay off that line of credit. Because say the line of credit was for 20 for a deposit, they've got 25 in their RSPs, no problem. We just use the line of credit. Come on in. Come on in, Caitlin, as a bridge. Was there enough? Did you have enough money?
Oh, funny.
I have an envelope. Where should I put all of them? Where should I put this?
Anywhere.
Yeah?
Anywhere. And
Are
have
we having a
some.
lunch party then?
Absolutely. This is the
Yeah.
best presentation I've ever done.
So
With the most
chill,
captive
awesome.
audience, and I know everyone's name.
Yeah. I bet they know yours too.
I could recite them all. So So think of a first timer. Let's just go over this once more.
First time buyer, they get the money from the RSP, 25%,
Yep.
the 25%. And what other benefits as a first time buyer?
Well, like, obviously it's their first time, so they may need a little bit more hand-holding than somebody that's a seasoned investor. But, so let's think about it. They get pre-approved, they tell you that my maximum is 500 purchase price, freehold, that's the most I can pay. You find them a place, it's 500, right on the button. They make an offer, you've had the conversation about the deposit, so maybe a mother fronts them $10 or $15 or $20,000. Once they unwind their RSPs, they can pay mother back. If mother doesn't have the money.
Question, how can they unwind the RSP? What do you mean with that?
So it's really just, it's just calling, let's say your RSPs are with Manulife. You've got an investment advisor. You say, hey look, John, I just bought a house. I want to participate in the home buyer's plan. I'm a first-time home buyer. I want to withdraw $25,000. So Manulife will take 3 or 4 or 5 business days. They'll monetize your investment. Maybe you held shares in Apple or something, and then they'll dump $25,000 into your checking account, and now you can go and access it. And that's what you might use as a deposit. But if you didn't do that before you made an offer, you've got to somehow get some deposit money elsewhere. And I always discourage people from going to Manulife to pull RSPs out in case they decide they're not going to buy a place. Like, I can't afford a place. I bid 500, it sold for 550. Because then they have to unwind that transaction, otherwise they're going to pay taxes. So I often have the conversation with the client, and a lot of times, mortgage brokers are a good source of leads for you. Because a lot of times people come to me first, and I'll say, are you working with a realtor? And often they'll say, yeah, I am. I said, oh, what's her name? Well, I'm not really sure, blah, 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 blah. Because everybody's got a realtor, right? So oftentimes clients come on for the financing side before they start getting deep into looking with a realtor. Everybody's looking at MLS.ca. So I think brokers, establishing a relationship with brokers is probably a good thing for you to do. When you think about spheres of influence and people in your community, and I think brokers are a good source because people I often get inquiries from someone that calls me and says, look, I was referred by my neighbor. They said you did a great job with their mortgage. And then that's when the broker can say, what's your realtor's name? And of course they can never answer it because they don't know their mother's neighbor's cousin is a new realtor. And no, you don't want to work. You want to work with someone in the community. You want to work with somebody that is going to look out for you. Yeah. And that's another conversation. Yeah. So hopefully that helps about the first time. Like and once the deal is signed, like that's not when your job ends, in my opinion. You can contact the lawyer. Hey, making sure you've got the deal. Here's the schedules. And maybe touching base with the lawyer, letting the client know, look, your lawyer's going to get mortgage instructions, and then the lawyer's going to be calling you and asking you to set up home insurance, and your lawyer's going to be asking you for a bank draft for the closing costs or the balance of the down payment, etc. And then guess what? Your closing is April 1st, but your first mortgage payment's not until May 1st. So mortgages are paid at the end of the month. Rent is paid at the beginning of the month. It's a beautiful thing, right? Because you buy a house, you think, oh my God, what am I doing? We put all of our savings into this house. Well, the good news is you didn't have to pay rent on April 1st because assuming you were renting, your last rent was probably Feb 1, March 1 was last month's rent. April 1 mortgage payment is May 1, so you've actually gone 2 or 3 months without a payment. And like this stuff is trivial, but I just think it helps. If you know it, like it's good. When would my first mortgage payment be? Right, good news, May 1. Everybody wants to pay their mortgage bi-weekly. And I think it's a mistake for a lot of people. But that's kind of another, I mean, happy to talk about it, but it's another conversation.
Before we continue, about first-time buyers, when they start doing the RSPs, when they start saving the money in the RSPs, I'm not too sure, but I wanted to ask this question. They have a different way to apply for RSPs before they decide to go buy and get a credit on it, or is they have to do monthly payments or yearly payments to the RSP in order to have the money?
Repaying the RSP?
No, when to initially.
Initially.
Start.
So, I'll try and answer. So, when I was your age, you're younger, some financial advisor approached me and said, look, let me show you the power, and computers were just kind of starting, and show me this presentation. So if you contribute $200 a month for the next 12 or 15 or 20 years, this is what's going to happen. So I did it.
Yeah.
So maybe 3 or 4 years into that process, I might have had $10,000 in RSPs. So I went to buy a house, and I participated in the program, and I just went to my financial advisor, and I said, hey, just bought a house, I want to participate in this program, and he'll have you sign a form, first time home buyer, etc., and then he'll dump the $10,000 into your account. So as long as the money has been in your RSP for 90 days, you can pull it out tax-free, up to $25,000 each.
And the reason why I asked that, because one of my clients, they said they went to see a mortgage broker, and they applied to him, to the government, to get this loan, which is called RSPs. I didn't go with that, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently they have the RSPs money, but they applied for it in the application, and they got that money. But it's not their money, it's government's money. It's like the RSP. They can only use it if they want to buy a house, otherwise they cannot use the money. Is that something like that?
It sounds like maybe they got a loan to borrow their RSPs. They got a loan, so not everybody's got $25,000 kicking around. So they went to the bank and said, look, we want to start an RSP account. And the bank said, look at their notice of assessments and said, look, you can both contribute $25,000 each. And your clients might have said, well, we don't have $25,000 each. And the bank said, oh, no problem. We'll lend you the money. You'll get a contribution receipt. You're going to get a big tax refund from Revenue Canada, and you can use that refund to pay back some of the loan. But otherwise, your payments are going to be $300 a month for the next 3 years to pay back the money. So that's okay as long as the TDS and GDS work with that $300 monthly payment, because that'll come up on their credit bureau. It's almost like a car payment. So, so it's okay to have loans, car payments, leases, etc., but they're going to impact how much you can borrow. So that RSP loan might affect how much your clients can borrow, because now the bank has to take into account that $300 payment. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So they borrow somewhere those 25 to put in the RSPs.
Mhm.
So when they go buy a house, they can use those 25,000.
Right.
But the $300 payment to the bank, that can like the credit, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that enough?
Yeah. Whether it's a loan, whatever we call it, it's a loan, and the lender has to take into account the loans at the time of the application to determine how much your client qualifies for it.
But why would they do that? Why don't they just go apply for a line of credit and just putting in the RSPs and then taking the RSPs and after 50 years pay back?
Because
Why would they do that? Is it any
well,
benefits?
the only reason the bank is lending them the money is the bank is saying, if you don't pay us back, we're going to take the RSPs back. So a line of credit doesn't give the bank any security other than your signature. But an RSP loan, the lender says, we want your signature, your guarantee, but we also going to wrap our arms around that $50,000 account, and if you don't pay us back, we're going to take them back. So it's almost like a mortgage. with the collateral being the RSP investment. So that's why banks are really
Because they
aggressive.
pay $300, but still, even if they have the $50,000 in the RSP, they cannot touch the money anyway. They paying $300 a month.
Yeah, so we're getting pretty specific here. I'd have to probably learn a little more about it. Whether they can pull money out of their RSP for the
Unless
home
it's
buyer's
for us.
purpose if they have a loan on it, right?
There's so many things, that's why I'm thinking, so many things going on with the
Let me
mortgage.
grab the pipe. You guys ready to grab the pipe?
Let me go to the bathroom quick and then.
Okay.